Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. A single shoe. A single shoe. That is what the final bit of Florida's 2020 season will be remembered for. The Gators started 8-1 before blowing the game at home to LSU, getting massively upset at home to LSU, a loss that started the beginning of a 3-game losing streak to end Florida's season. The Gators, once college football playoff contenders, ended the year at 8-4. But regardless, Florida clocks in at number 20 in our early Gridiron Expert Top 25, and today we're analyzing their schedule, analyzing the Gators' schedule to see if they can win the SEC East for a second year in a row. Now again, we are not predicting any of the games up on this board. Those predictions will come much later in the summer when we do game-by-game predictions for every single team. But today we're just analyzing the schedule, taking a look at a key stretch of games, a few games that can make or break their season, and giving you a brief outlook of what Florida might look like in 2021. Because again, guys, this was a dang good football team in 2020. One of the best offenses in the country. Kyle Trask, Kyle Pitts, Kadarius Toney, Trayvon Grimes. All of them were so key in having Florida in a position to maybe make the playoff had they not lost to LSU. And of course, had they somehow defeated Alabama in the SEC championship game, a game they only lost by 6. But all those players that I just mentioned are now gone. Florida is going through a massive rebuild, a reshuffle of so many key players that made 2020 such a big success. And that's why there are so mmany doubters out there as to whether or not Florida can even contend in the East this year. Can they win it? Are they still playoff contenders? Or are they going to stoop back to 8-4, 9-3, somewhere mediocre, somewhere maybe borderline New Year's 6, but not at the level they want to be? That is the million-dollar question. They lose so much on offense. Now Emory Jones is the man at quarterback. Is he going to be able to take over and put up numbers that Kyle Trask did? Or even, half of what he did, really? Can he do that? And can the defense improve drastically after being absolutely abysmal last year under Todd Grantham? So many questions for Florida entering 2021 that if they don't answer them and address them, it might not be a very fun season. It might not be. So let's take a look at their schedule here. Can Florida contend for the East? They're 20th in our rankings. Can they contend for the East and maybe surprise some people despite the losses? When you look here, guys, the first 2 games of the year, not too worried about it. Florida Atlantic, South Florida, both in theory should result in wins for Florida. They kind of get a nice little cupcake walkthrough, a bunch of new players, a bunch of chemistry needs to be built. They should be able to find that in their first 2 games. Their first conference game is absolutely brutal. Alabama on September 18th. Luckily for the Gators, they get to host them in the Swamp. That's the only silver lining to come out of this. It's unfortunate you drew Alabama out of the West, but at least you drew them at home. Alabama and LSU, the 2 teams out of the West for Florida this year, not the most favorable draw. Alabama, of course, going to go through so many different shuffles themselves. They lose Mac Jones. They lose Jalen Waddle. They lose Devontae Smith, Najee Harris. Lots of big players on both sides of the ball, but Alabama does this every year. The Crimson Tide are more suited to go through a reshuffle like that, maybe better than any other team in the entire country. So this will be an intriguing early season matchup, SEC championship game rematch, but it's a really test Florida. We'll really see what they're made of. They win, huge upset, they're legit, even if they lose by a small margin like they did in the title game. Maybe they're not as bad as we thought. So this is going to be a really big test for Dan Mullen and the Gators. After Alabama, you have Tennessee. Not many people are worried about Tennessee going into 2021. New era with Josh Heupel. It's going to take a massive rebuild and a lot of work with that Volunteers program, who, as we've said over and over again, is an absolute dumpster fire right now. When you look after Tennessee, so entering the month of October, to me, the entire month of October is the key for Florida. The entire month of October is going to make or break their season. And obviously, it all rests on this Georgia game right here. The game against Georgia in Jacksonville is usually what's going to determine who wins the SEC East. That obviously depends on what Florida does, because let's keep in mind, the Gators could have a conference loss by week 3. They lose to Alabama, they'll already have a conference loss. Georgia might not. And if Florida has 2 conference losses entering October 30th, all bets are off. Even if they upset the Bulldogs, if Georgia escapes with only one conference loss, it doesn't matter. They still win the East. So the path to the SEC championship game a little bit more difficult for Florida this year. Not very easy. Maybe a little bit easier than Georgia, who obviously does not draw Alabama out of the West this year. But you look here at the month of October at Kentucky. That's not an easy game. Yes, Florida beat the Wildcats 34-10 last year, but Mark Stoops is building something, continuing to build something in Lexington. He has shown that after Kentucky lost, 31 straight games to Florida, he has shown that he's not afraid to play the Gators, whether it's in Lexington or in Gainesville, and he knows he can beat them because he's done it. So yes, they lost by 24 last year, but the game's in Lexington this year. Two very completely different teams. And Kentucky's got a lot of talent. Stoops has done a great job recruiting, utilizing the transfer portal. I'm not saying Florida's losing this game. I'm not saying that they're winning this game. We're not making predictions here. But I'm saying this Kentucky game is no slouch. It's not going to be a walk in the park for Florida. It's going to be an absolute dogfight on October 2nd. Vanderbilt, probably not so much. Clark Lee, new head coach there, but not expecting much of a fight, especially in Gainesville. At LSU, though, that's going to be a very difficult game. Obviously, emotions are going to be very high in this game, considering what happened last year. LSU walked into the swamp with Max Johnson as their quarterback, upsets the Gators in Gainesville because Marco Wilson chunked a shoe 30 yards, if that. That's why we mentioned that at the beginning. I mean, guys, it was still in awe of that. I know you Florida fans probably are too. LSU goes in the swamp, pulls off a massive upset. Any slim chance that Florida had of making the playoff ended as soon as Marco Wilson threw that shoe. So now the game is in Death Valley. LSU is expecting a big bounce back. Miles Brennan should be healthy. Great defense, especially in the secondary. New offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. LSU is expecting to bounce back from that 5-5 season they had last year. With the game being in Death Valley, especially if we can have sold-out crowds or most capacity now that COVID is hopefully starting to die down, it's going to be a lot more difficult than anything else. Anything we saw last year where teams were less capacity. We saw that, right? So LSU is not going to be a walk in the park either. So at Kentucky, at LSU, extremely difficult. Yeah, they get that little buffer there with Vanderbilt. Then they get their bye week and they play Georgia and Jacksonville. And Georgia's a top 5 team in the country to start the year, maybe even top 3 for some. JT Daniels is now their full-time starter. Many people believe the Bulldogs are basically a lock for the East and maybe a lock for the playoff as long as they don't lose twice. Remember, they do open the season against Clemson. But again, coming full circle here, yes, this game is huge. It's still in that 4-game stretch that we believe is the biggest stretch for Florida. Again, the entire month of October. But if Florida loses to Alabama and then they slip up once to Kentucky or LSU or both, this game against Georgia doesn't matter. It matters more for Georgia not just to slip up and get a bad loss on the resume than it does for Florida. Because if the Gators have 2 losses or 3 losses in conference, they can beat Georgia, but then they're still going to need Georgia to continue to slip up. And I don't see the Bulldogs doing that. So that's why the month of October is so big. You lose to Alabama, that's fine. You beat Kentucky, you beat LSU, and your only loss is to Alabama. Well, the game against Georgia is huge because if Florida wins that, now they're in the driver's seat of the SEC East. That, again, is why the month of October is so crucial for the Gators. And, of course, we'll see how it all plays out. Can't afford to overlook teams like Kentucky. Can't afford to overlook teams like Missouri. Other teams in the East can contend this year or be teams that can end hopes, can be spoilers. But Florida and Georgia, I think for many, are still the top 2 in the division. So after that key stretch of October, really the entire month of October, you get into the month of November, and it lightens up a little bit for Florida. I don't like the road game at South Carolina or at Missouri. Obviously, I don't like road games, period. But South Carolina shouldn't be that big of a struggle for the Gators. They're going through a lot of changes right now. New head coach, quarterback questions. I'm not too worried about the Gamecocks this year for anybody, at least as of now. Florida did defeat the Gamecocks 38-24 last year. Samford, no big deal. At Missouri, Florida defeated the Tigers 41-17. It will not be by that much this year, if at all. Eli Drinkwitz drastically exceeded my expectations in 2020. Connor Bazelak is back at quarterback. He was very efficient. Wasn't anything flashy, but he was efficient. Defense impressed me. The offense impressed me. Missouri's a team that could very well win anywhere between 6 to, dare I say, 9 games in 2021. Do not overlook the Tigers. And Florida cannot afford to overlook that depending on how their season's going, especially with the rivalry game here. And it's one thing that you've noticed for a lot of teams, when they realize their hopes are done, When they realize, hey, we can't win the division, we can't win the conference, we're not going to the playoff, they almost give up in a way. And so you can't help but wonder, depending on how Florida's season's going by November 20th, what's their motivation level going to be at? Are they still in the SEC title hunt? Are they still in a New Year's Six bowl hunt? If they're not, I'm not saying they're not going to try, but you might say Missouri would be more motivated than the Gators. Watch out for the Tigers here. I really think this game against Kentucky and Missouri are the two biggest trap games on Florida's schedule going into 2021. They round out the year against Florida State, didn't get to play them last year due to COVID, even though it made no sense. Teams could travel out of state to play conference opponents, but couldn't stay in state to continue historic rivalry games. Made no sense. But now the rivalry is renewed. The Gators and the Seminoles will play in the season finale. Mike Norvell now in year 2. Hopefully will show some improvement with the Seminoles, but is it enough to come on the road to Gainesville and get the win? Remains to be seen, but right now, probably not. The FPI giving Florida an 8-4 record in 2021. For many teams across the country, that's a great record. For Florida, it's not. Would be the exact same record that they had last year. And Florida fans, you have to understand you don't have the same team that you had last year. So you're not going to put up the same numbers as you had last year. And you're probably not going to contend at as high a level as you did last year. That team was very special, especially that offense. The team can still contend for an SEC title, but are they playoff contenders? Probably not. This is a team that many think will take a step back. They will regress. And again, you will know that for a fact. You will know if this team has regressed or not before they play Georgia. By October 23rd, you will know if Florida is still towards the top of the division or, hey, this was just a rebuilding year because we lost so much. FPI says 8-4. Gridiron Expert says, got to wait to find out. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at The Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, hit that little bell. Turn on those notifications because we are continuing to go through these schedule previews for our top 25 teams, and you don't know which team is coming up next. We haven't released our top 25, so you never know which preview is coming up. It could be your team. So hit that notification button. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to check out everything down in the description below. Exclusive content year-round, always down in the description. Make sure to give it a look. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.